Have you ever wondered why some of the richest countries in Africa still struggle with poverty? This question has puzzled economists, policymakers, and everyday people for decades. In today's video, I'll explore the complex reasons behind Africa's paradox of wealth and poverty. It's a topic that's both fascinating and infuriating, and one that requires a nuanced understanding of the continent's history, politics, and economics. Africa is home to an estimated 30% of the world's natural resources, including diamonds, gold, oil, and coltan. It's a treasure trove that has fueled economic growth and development in other parts of the world. Yet despite its vast wealth, many African countries continue to grapple with poverty, inequality, and underdevelopment. This paradox is not just morally reprehensible, it's also economically and politically unsustainable. There are many reasons why Africa's wealth has not translated into broad-based prosperity for its citizens. One major factor is the legacy of colonialism, which has left behind a toxic mix of exploitation, dependency, and underdevelopment. Another is the lack of good governance, which has allowed corruption, mismanagement, and nepotism to flourish. And then there's the issue of economic mismanagement, which has led to misallocated resources, inflation, and instability. There are deeper, more complex factors at play, and it's these that I want to explore in today's video. From the role of foreign aid to the impact of globalization, we'll examine the various factors that have contributed to Africa's poverty and underdevelopment. When we talk about Africa's wealth, we're not just talking about natural resources, we're also talking about human capital, intellectual property, and cultural heritage. We're talking about the rich diversity of African cultures, languages, and traditions that have been marginalized and suppressed for centuries. We're talking about the incredible resilience and resourcefulness of African people in the face of adversity. In the next section, we'll dive deeper into the background of Africa's economic history, including the impact of colonialism, the Cold War, and globalization. We'll examine how these historical events have shaped the continent's development trajectory and created the conditions for poverty and underdevelopment. Africa's economic history is marked by a series of external interventions, from the transatlantic slave trade to the scramble for Africa. These events have disrupted traditional economic systems, destroyed local industries, and created dependencies on foreign capital and expertise. The legacy of these interventions continues to shape Africa's economic development today, making it difficult for countries to break free from the cycle of poverty and underdevelopment. One of the most significant challenges facing African countries is the lack of economic diversification. Many countries rely heavily on a single commodity, such as oil or cocoa, which makes them vulnerable to fluctuations in global prices. This lack of diversification has led to economic instability, currency fluctuations, and a lack of investment in other sectors. Another challenge is the lack of good governance, which has allowed corruption and mismanagement to flourish. In many countries, the ruling elite has hijacked the political system, using their power to enrich themselves and their cronies at the expense of the general population. This has led to a lack of accountability, transparency, and democratic participation. A third challenge is the impact of colonialism, which has left a legacy of dependency and underdevelopment. Many African countries were forced to adopt European languages, cultures, and economic systems, which has led to a loss of cultural identity and a lack of confidence in local capabilities. A fourth challenge is the role of foreign aid, which has created a culture of dependency and undermining local initiatives. Foreign aid has often been tied to conditionalities that benefit foreign donors rather than local communities, perpetuating the cycle of poverty and underdevelopment. A fifth challenge is the impact of globalization, which has created new forms of exploitation and inequality. Globalization has led to the emergence of new economic powers, such as China, which has created new challenges and opportunities for African countries. The Democratic Republic of Congo, for example, is home to an estimated 80% of the world's coltan, a key mineral used in electronic devices. Yet the country's mining sector is dominated by foreign companies, which has led to environmental degradation, labor exploitation, and minimal benefits for local communities. Similarly, Nigeria is home to massive oil reserves, but the country's oil sector is plagued by corruption, mismanagement, and environmental degradation. The benefits of oil extraction have not trickled down to local communities who continue to live in poverty and neglect. In Mozambique, the discovery of natural gas has created new opportunities for economic growth, but it has also led to concerns about environmental degradation, displacement of local communities, and the lack of transparency in the extractive industry. In each of these cases, we see how Africa's wealth is being extracted and exploited by foreign powers, leaving local communities to bear the costs of poverty and underdevelopment. Some might argue that foreign aid is the solution to Africa's poverty, but the evidence suggests otherwise. Foreign aid has often been used to promote the interests of donor countries rather than local communities. It has created a culture of dependency, undermined local initiatives, and perpetuated the cycle of poverty and underdevelopment. Others might argue that globalization is the key to Africa's economic development. But the evidence suggests that globalization has created new forms of exploitation and inequality. It has led to the emergence of new economic powers, such as China, which has created new challenges and opportunities for African countries. So what's the way forward? How can Africa break free from the cycle of poverty and underdevelopment? In my view, the solution lies in promoting good governance, economic diversification, and local empowerment. It lies in creating an enabling environment that allows local communities to take ownership of their development trajectory. In conclusion, Africa's poverty is a complex issue that requires a nuanced understanding of the continent's history, politics, and economics. It's a problem that cannot be solved by foreign aid or globalization alone. It requires a fundamental transformation of the African economy, one that prioritizes local empowerment, good governance, and economic diversification. Thanks for watching, and I'd love to hear your thoughts on this topic in the comments below. If you're interested in exploring more videos on African development, be sure to check out our upcoming video on the impact of colonialism on African economies.